Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about taking big, complex ideas and making them super clear and, more importantly, useful for you.
So we've all been there, right? You map out this perfect plan, you set your goals, but then reality hits. And suddenly there's this gap that just always seems to open up between the beautiful plan you made and, well, where you actually are. Now, the solution isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter. And in the world of management, that means using a powerful framework called the control process. You can think of it like a GPS for your goals. It's this continuous loop that helps you navigate all the twists and turns. What's really fascinating about this is where the logic comes from. It turns out, whether you're trying to manage a team's budget or control the temperature inside a chemical reactor, the core thinking is exactly the same. Measure, compare, and then act. It's basically taking a core principle from engineering and applying it to people and projects. Pretty cool, right? All right, so let's dive into step one. Before you can hope to control anything, you've got to be able to see it clearly, and that all starts with gathering the right information. So you've basically got four tools in your measurement toolkit. You've got personal observation, literally walking around and seeing things for yourself. You've got statistical reports for all the hard data. You have oral updates, just talking to people in meetings, and of course, the formal written reports. Now, here's the crucial part. A great manager never ever relies on just one of these. See, each method has its own blind spots. The stats might tell you what happened, but they won't tell you why. Getting out there and observing gives you great context, but man, it's time-consuming. You absolutely have to blend all four to get the full, unfiltered picture of what's really going on. Okay, so you know how to measure. The next massive question is, what should you be measuring? Because if you're only tracking something simple like output, you could be driving your entire organization right toward a cliff and not even realize it. This is where you have to look beyond the obvious numbers. For example, a dip in employee satisfaction, that's not just a feelings problem. It's often a leading indicator that safety incidents are about to spike. And high employee turnover, that means you're bleeding what's called tacit knowledge, all that crucial experience that just walks out the door and never comes back. Think of these as your early warning system. So, you've got your data. Now for the fun part, making sense of it all. We're moving into the analytical engine of this whole process, comparing what is to what should be. This is where you learn to separate the signal from the noise. Okay, let's play this out. Imagine you run a chemical plant, and your standard for product purity is a really strict 98%. You check the latest report from the lab, and today's reading is 97.5%. So, what do? Do you sound the alarm, shut down the entire production line, or is this just a minor blip, a totally normal fluctuation? This right here is the kind of call managers have to make all day long. The key skill, the real trick, is to define an acceptable range of variation before you even start. That way, you can automatically filter out all the insignificant noise, the tiny random ups and downs that happen in any system. This lets you focus all of your energy on the real signals, the deviations that truly matter. So you found a real signal, a significant deviation. This moment forces a decision. And that brings us to the final, and honestly the most critical step. What are you actually going to do about it? Fundamentally, you have three choices. The first one might surprise you. Often, the best move is to do nothing, especially if you decide the variation is actually within your acceptable range. The other two options are to correct the performance or, and this is the really tough one, to revise the standard itself. Now, if you do decide to correct performance, you have to know the difference between two kinds of action. Immediate action is like first aid. It's about stopping the bleeding right now, hitting the emergency stop. But basic action is about being a detective. It's about figuring out why the bleeding started in the first place, so you can make sure it never ever happens again. But here's where it gets really tricky. This leads to maybe the most difficult question a manager can face. What if the problem isn't the performance at all? What if the problem is the yardstick you're using to measure it? For instance, let's say a biodiesel plant in Malaysia is constantly missing a production target, but that target was set in a perfectly controlled lab in Europe. Is the team in Malaysia failing? Or is the standard itself just completely unrealistic, failing to account for things like local humidity and temperature? In that case, punishing the team is a huge mistake. The only right action is to revise the standard to reflect reality. So we've got these three steps: measure, compare, act. But how do they all connect? Well, their real power comes when you stop seeing them as a list and start seeing them as a single, powerful logic loop.
You have to think of it less like a static checklist and more like a piece of software, an algorithm that you can run over and over again. It's a dynamic system that guides you all the way from a high-level goal down to a very specific corrective action. In this chart here, it lays out that whole logic tree beautifully. It's really just a series of simple if-then questions. You ask, is the standard being met? If the answer's no, you ask, is the variance acceptable? And if that's also a no, then you get to the big one. Is the standard itself even valid?
The best way to think about this is like a funnel. First, you filter out all your successes. No need to worry about those. Then, you filter out all the minor noise. After that, you question the standards themselves. And what's left at the very bottom of that funnel? That's the true root cause of your problem. The one thing that actually deserves your limited time and energy.
And that brings us to the big takeaway here. Being able to control performance is, without a doubt, a powerful skill. But having the wisdom and the courage to question the standard itself, that is what separates a good manager from a truly great one.